Welcome to the Bias Buzz, the fastest 30 minutes of political podcasting. I'm Don Irvine, and he's Brian McNichol.
Good morning.
All right. The big news, obviously, is from yesterday is the FBI Director James Comey got up kind of unexpectedly. No one was counting on him doing this, and had a press conference or news conference, whatever you want to call it, talk about the Hillary Clinton investigation. The FBI had met with Clinton for 3.5 hours on Saturday, very conveniently that it was a July 4th weekend, to talk about her private email server and the emails, and basically let her off scot-free. Let's talk about this a little bit.
Well, I don't know that they let her off scot-free. They said they would not prosecute her, okay? But then he laid out what would have been the case for prosecuting her. That she did delete it. She did not turn over all the emails, as she said. She made emails impossible to find, which she said she didn't do. She did not fully cooperate. She was not careful. She quite probably was hacked, right? Although they can't prove it, And one that came out yesterday that had never been talked about before is she went into foreign countries where, they're very aggressive about surveilling our people, and was sending BlackBerry messages over wireless to her compadres, that went through this server that was obviously compromised, that they know was compromised. The people receiving the emails, they know were hacked. So it makes sense that she was. So while we're not going to get a trial of this, what we did get was the prosecution's case with no real opportunity for the defense to rebut.
Okay, and Comey, the interesting thing about him was that, he kind of built up this case and then said, we're not going to go ahead and recommend that this go on for the prosecution at the DOJ. But, he did get fairly specific. 113 emails were classified at the time that they were sent. That fully rebuts anything that Clinton had said. Thousands of work emails were deleted. Chris Cillizza pointed out today in the Washington Post that that more emails were deleted than were turned over or something. So there's still a lot of emails that they've never seen, and they probably will never see. No official emails were intentionally deleted. Remember, intentionally would be the key word there. What else was here? Okay, there are likely more work-related emails that will never be recovered. She used more than one server and multiple mobile devices.
Which goes against another thing,
right?
Another claim.
It's, as you said, it was possible she was. I loved when he was talking about the hacking because he said he called them, what was it, foreign actors,
right?
And so they couldn't prove that she was hacked, but they thought she was. This is just, there's so many things going on here.
And the people getting emails from her or writing emails to her, they know were hacked. So. It's very close to the fire if it's not in the fire.
Right. Another thing that was, as you watch the talk shows, if you read a little bit more about this, what you were seeing too is that people were talking about this, was that the people who were receiving their emails, they knew, either they were hacked or that these emails, a lot of them were classified. So you can't plead all this ignorance and say that all this didn't happen, because it did happen.
Right. Every substantial thing that Republicans or investigators have said Hillary Clinton did with regard to emails, Comey essentially confirmed. He said he could not ascribe motive because he didn't get that far for whatever reason. I think the interview on Saturday was to see if she would lie, right? To ask the questions and make her either lie or say she refused to answer. They really have no way to compel her to answer. And she passed that test. She either didn't answer it or she managed to tell what little bit of the truth she could. But like we've discussed before, she was exposed as a liar on this completely. And this all grew out of the Benghazi committee. We found out about all of this for the $7 million that was wasted on the Gowdy committee. The other thing to point out is you've now had two Republican led investigations. Comey was a Republican, worked for Ashcroft. He was number 2 at Justice under Ashcroft. Republican political appointee a couple of times. He was a prosecutor in New York. And Gowdy, okay, at both times, they refused to outkick the coverage. They refused to make a bunch of outlandish charges that the evidence did not support. They were measured in their findings, right? And it's frustrating to a lot of the people on the right because, you wanted this kill shot, you wanted this indictment, you wanted this big thing that humiliates her. But what has happened is they've made a pretty convincing case why she should not be president. And they've done it with the evidence that not even the Democrats can deny.
Right, and I don't think there was ever going to be an indictment. I think there were definitely a lot of people on the right that were going in that direction. They were calling for this. I think that would have been politically unpalatable. You would have thrown the Democrats into turmoil in a presidential election year. I just didn't see really that coming down the pipeline. You're right. Comey was very measured in his approach. That disappointed a lot of people. What was his motivation, though, for doing something which was a very unusual step for the FBI director to go in front of the camera like this and really kind of get ahead of what the DOJ would probably finally rule?
Well, I think that for one thing, he protected the integrity of the agency to the extent possible, right? Here are the agency's findings. Here is what the evidence supports. Here's our documentation for it. So when they say, when she announces, which she will perfunctorily and off camera and no one will care, that she's indeed not going to indict, right? Then you can say, well, the FBI did its job. They gave them the stuff, they made their recommendation. They took the evidence as far as it could, and they did their thing. There's a fix. There may be a fix, right? And my suspicion is the timing of all this had to do with Comey realizing there was a fix, that whatever he did was not going to lead to an indictment. That's why he did it when he did it. He's like, we're not going to get there, so we're going to make our case to the American people. Here's what we found. Okay. The other thing is, it is a political question, right? A lot of this, we're not in the, we don't have her shooting someone, right? We have her messing with email, hiding things that we wanted to see that should be in the public record. Okay. The punishment for that is to beat her in an election. That's not a prison offense. I mean, we all, a lot of people on the right are like, oh, orange jumpsuit, this and that.
Hillary for prison, bumper stickers, the whole 9 yards.
But I mean, the real thing is to win the election, right? And I think that, Donald Trump is now incredibly the candidate of prudence in this election. Which candidate do you want if you want to vote for prudence? The answer, unbelievably, today has become Donald Trump.
Did the FBI, did James Comey, in essence, did they just wind up writing or producing campaign ads for Trump?
Yeah.
I mean, look, even the media, as I was saying earlier, they're jumping all over this. This is just kind of, I may have said scot-free, but when I was saying scot-free, just they've let her off the hook in the sense that they're not going to prosecute. What she does, as you point out, is that she still has a lot of problems. She hasn't been totally exonerated. She really can't comment on saying I'm exonerated on this because she's not. She still has problems, and this goes to that trust and honesty issue, which has been dogging her since day one, and will continue to dog her now, even more so, I think, as a result of this. But Hillary's got a lot of problems as a result of this. Trump benefits as long as he doesn't stumble or somehow manage to screw this up. They're heading into a convention here in less than 2 weeks. This should be all good news for Trump and the Republicans.
Some really tough news cycles coming up for her because now the liberal press, this is your one chance to sort of look objective, right? So if you read the headlines today, the Post, New York Times, all the left papers are saying, yes, a lot of bad things did get reported because they really have no choice, right? So, they're trying to get some virtue out of necessity here, but, more power to them this once, right? The story is the story. She got caught with her hand in the cookie jar badly, right? And the other thing is, what does this do to the convention? What does this do? Kills Never Trump, right? Never Trump is never.
We hope so.
We
hope so.
Right? Is never going to happen now because, he's probably the best positioned person to leap on something like this. Of all the people, all those 17 people that were running for Republican president, there's a lot about Trump I don't like. That makes me really uncomfortable. But, would you want any of those other guys in the position of having this thing to play with? His statement yesterday was masterful. So there's now an adult in charge over there somewhere because it broke down the case against him masterfully and really hurt her.
Yeah, so it's kind of, this is interesting the way this is all flowing about and everything like this. And, back to the media again. They're looking at this. I mean, they have a hard time with this because how do you spin the FBI directors when he says she was careless? There's just not a lot of room for them to wiggle and do this. So you were seeing these, at least I think they're relatively objective stories. And the Washington Post fact checker, which addressed this issue in terms of the email controversy and her private server back in August, revisited this,
dredged it up, and added Pinocchios.
Right, they went from 2 Pinocchios to 4, and 4 is as much as you can get.
Yeah.
So they doubled the Pinocchios. They're basically saying she has outright lied. I mean, they're not leaving any. There's no wiggle room here. This is it. This is cut and dry. She has lied about this. How did she get away from this? Her negatives, which are polling around 60% for the whole trustworthiness issue, I don't know how they stay there. I don't know how they don't, the next time we get a chance to see a poll, how they don't shoot up after this with the reasonable person, at least.
There's what, about 10-12% of the people out there who legitimately haven't figured it out, which way they're going to go. And then there's a lot of people who haven't talked themselves into voting for Trump. They would not vote for her under any circumstances. And there's, still a stubborn 8 or 10% looking at the libertarian ticket. But all those people in the middle, all those people who can't figure it out one way or the other, today got a strong shove toward Trump, right? Because of this. And you're right, they can't deny it. They're playing with it, and there's a little bit of spin. There's like, hey, George Bush destroyed some emails. Like, we don't really care about that, guys.
And Hillary, what I hear Hillary saying is that, we still see the clips of them playing how she talked about how the rules were clarified and things like that later,
right,
and all of this stuff. But none of this is flying.
Right. It's not. Yeah. And she knew. It's like, I didn't knowingly. It was very telling that like she and the president campaigned in North Carolina yesterday didn't mention any of this. After Benghazi, it's time to move on. See what we need to see here. They didn't get me. After the hearing, when she appeared before the Benghazi committee, they came at me for 17 hours. They didn't get me. Well, they did get you on a lot of stuff. You're whistling past the graveyard dead. But now she's not even making a pretense of they didn't get me. They got you. Okay, they're letting you stay out of prison, but they got you, and everybody knows it.
But what Obama wants you to remember that she's the most qualified man or woman to ever run for the office.
Right. Whatever.
I don't know how you justify that at all. Now, this would have been the bigger story had not the FBI thing, come into play, which has been getting a lot of press, which was Loretta Lynch, Attorney General, meeting with Bill Clinton. What a very strange situation. What was going through the minds of either one of those individuals in terms of how that was going to play out?
Well, Bill doesn't care, right? So what's going through his mind is he went and explained to her that, we haven't chosen a Attorney General for if Hillary wins. And, the person in office now is not doing such a bad job. We could consider keeping you on, That was his message. Did they talk about this case? No, they talked about the future and grandkids. And, my grandkids will grow up with you as Attorney General. How about that? So they're not, her part of it is, you don't have control. That's another one. The story doesn't fly. You don't have control over it comes in your plane. You couldn't tell, you got to tell him, sir, you can't come in here. That would look so bad, right? And do not perceive that we would perceive that the fix is in. Those two things combined, those, the findings that Comey released, this ladled on top of it, makes the fix is in case pretty airtight for anyone who wants to think that way.
Well, I loved how Loretta Lynch was trying to explain this away at first, and the story seemed to kind of change to the point that, in the end, she regretted doing that. She realized that it was a bad decision, it was poor optics.
Right. At first, it was I couldn't do anything about it, and I didn't realize it. And then it was I shouldn't have done that. Well, if you couldn't do anything about it, then it's not a shouldn't have done it, right? It's one or the other.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about Bill Clinton. You're going to get from the FBI a recommendation as to what to do about his wife's involvement with this email server and things like this. how do you, as the Attorney General of the United States, not think that this is a bad idea going forward, and that you're going to explain this away by saying, well, really, we're just talking about the grandchildren
and golf, and she has no grandchildren, and she does not golf.
Yeah. So and liberals in the media weren't buying this. I mean, when the liberals in the media don't buy the story, you've got a problem.
That's right.
Yeah, I think it doesn't make a lot of sense. So Loretta, yeah, I mean, I can see the angle of, we don't have an AG yet. You seem to be okay. You seem to be pretty well respected. Let's think about that. Just plant that seed in your mind about what do you want to do going forward.
And now you're 13 days from the Republican, or 12, 13 days, and then 20 days from the Democrat. This is 3 weeks of bad news cycles for her. There's really no way around it. Do you see, unless absent something catastrophic happening, this is what we're going to be talking about through the conventions.
All right. So I'm going to mention also in relation to all this, Huma Abedin, who had given some testimony in this case as well. What I thought was interesting is that when one of the last things she said was talking about the burn bag and the burning of the schedules. I don't know. I don't think I was expecting to hear the words burn bag out of this.
Right. Right. And so and why is that? Why can't we know where that's generally a public document? It's generally, in fact, distributed to the press. Okay, so that just shows you, like, the whole attitude is to tell them as little as possible. And how can you elect somebody president who's, their entire public record, 40 years of public record, whatever you think of her accomplishments or her politics, she is undeniable, unending pursuit of secrecy.
Right, and I don't think Huma did her any favors.
Right.
Right?
It's kind of an odd thing for her to say, and it makes me wonder, what is she thinking? Because, she's very close to some problems, too. And there's also, her parents are connected up with people in the Middle East who don't look too good right now. Maybe she's getting worried about her own skin.
All right. Now, you mentioned Obama and Clinton together on the campaign trail in North Carolina. That this was going to be, as ABC News, as Cecilia Vega had said the other day, this is her big week. She's going to have Obama. She's going to have Biden. She was going to go up to New Jersey or something like that and pound away at Trump. And then this news comes out and kind of overtakes the news cycle. But one of the other things that came out of this was the use of Air Force One and the tremendous cost, $206,000+ per hour, and how much the campaign was going to reimburse, the public really for the use of that. I mean, do you have a problem with the use? Other presidents have done this. Is this a real big problem?
Well, the president needs that in terms of secure communications and, security, getting him in and out of places. I get that. It's going to happen. They reimburse them, kind of so what.
I don't know, maybe, was it 10 cents on the dollar, maybe?
Right. But the thing about it is it's like the importance is win elections, okay? Don't lose elections. It's like, in 2000, it suddenly mattered who the Secretary of State of Florida was, right? Win elections. Use this. You don't want courts doing your work. You want to win elections. And the Republicans have given a golden opportunity here yesterday to win the election. They did not get the court decision. But see, that's what they always accuse the left of. Hey, you try to get out of courts what you can't get out of public will. Let's get it out of public will. You got the opportunity.
Right, and I think, your points are well taken in terms of the whole Benghazi thing and then this thing, is that, we didn't get the victory in court, but in a lot of ways, the victory will hopefully be in the election, kind of the court of public opinion, right?
This is better.
Yeah, so this is probably the better way to do it, because you can hold her to it. And if Trump can hammer away at her, just continues to erode that credibility, I'd hope that the voters out there recognize that the qualities that Hillary Clinton is exuding right now of being a liar, being careless, all these kinds of things are not the qualities you want in the President of the United States.
Yeah. Cares more about her secrecy and keeping her Clinton Foundation. That's what's in the emails we've never seen, right? Is selling policy for contributions to the Clinton Foundation. And people say, I saw somebody on the left say, well, it's hard to hit the Clinton Foundation because they do so much good. Like, all we hear about is they're selling influence. I don't know about, I assume they're doing some good, right? But, all I'm hearing is bad stuff, right? It's pretty much a steady drumbeat of, playing around with abhorrent dictators all over the world, shuffling money into slush funds and so forth. It's not a positive image for it at all.
Yeah, I mean, the Clinton Foundation looks like just another vehicle for the Clintons to enrich themselves in the end, right?
That's right.
And to help them politics. So yeah, if Hillary wins the election, what role does the foundation have? I mean, all that influence that they've been kind of buying and selling, and over the years, how much does that come into play? I mean, there's a lot of baggage coming into this presidency should she win.
Right. So yeah, right. You have all the people who've given money in expectation of current or future favors, right? And all the people who now have emails on her. She's owned. You want a president who's owned by Putin? See those pictures of Putin? He's got that smile, like, yeah, I got it all. So you can't, you cannot elect somebody who's going to be beholden to the head of Russia.
I'm waiting for Vlad to say I'm with her.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
So we will see that. Now, there was just a short bit here. One of the things I thought was funny just about a week and a half ago when Hillary spoke to the Rainbow Push Coalition Women's Lunch, for some reason in the bio that was distributed to all the attendees, it mentioned that she had received a subpoena. They mentioned the Whitewater investigation, and they mentioned the Lewinsky scandal. When contacted, the Rainbow Push people said, well, the intern, whoever worked on that, had brain freeze, apparently had cut and pasted from Wikipedia. Now, I'm going to tell you something. I find this rather amusing.
The former intern.
Yeah, the former intern. But to think that Wikipedia actually had that in there and the left allowed that to stay in there. How did that happen?
Yeah. Well, Wikipedia it's its own battlefield for all kind of stuff, and generally it ends up having to be fairly right, because of the just ease of which it is challenged. I worked for Tom Davis. There was a story about him in the Washington Post once about the guy who does the electronics show in Vegas, and Tom's wife worked for
like the CES show.
Yeah,
okay.
And it was all this like cobbled together things to make it look, and so he's I don't think he's spoken to that reporter since, but that guy went in and edited a lot of stuff into it, and so you went through. One of the things we did was challenged the obviously political rhetoric in his Wikipedia.
So it can happen, but I just thought that was a rather amusing thing. The truth really hurts, and for a left-wing liberal organization like Rainbow Push to have that distributed to their members, and then you have all this other stuff that's come out since then on that, just the reinforcement of all the things, the shady nature of Hillary.
And the other thing about that is there is a chasm, small growing chasm between Hillary and African American voters, right? Bill Clinton was considered the first black president, but now when they go back and look at what he did, welfare reform, which was tough, right? Criminal justice reform, which was tough on that same community. A lot of them are looking at her and say, well, she starts wars, and she backed these other things, and the predator class statement she made. Maybe she is not as monolithically worthy of our support as past Democratic candidates. So, it might have been an accident. They may have just said, oh, it was an accident, and it not been such an accident, right? Because, there's something, it's not like it used to be with her and them.
All right, so we're going to go across the pond just to talk briefly about the British Prime Minister. So David Cameron has resigned as a result of Brexit, or will officially resign, I guess, in October. Mm-hmm. The Conservative Party held their first round of election, and that was just with a small group of 300 or something like that members. Theresa May came out on top by a pretty wide margin. Now, Boris Johnson was going to run. I thought he was going to be the shoe-in, and then Michael Gove kind of basically stabbed him in the back and decided he wasn't a qualified candidate and decided to run himself. So then Boris fires back and gets this Andrea Leadsom to run. So she finishes second. So, it was now May, Leadsom, and then Gove was third. The way I understand this works is that they'll have another round of voting, which I believe will take place tomorrow, and they need to get it down to 2. And then they can move it on to a wider party election later on. Now, the interesting thing about this is that even though that May is in the lead right now, that's not a guarantee that she will wind up as the prime minister for the Conservative Party, because David Cameron actually was in second place. And look what happened to him.
Right.
So British politics are kind of interesting. You can't read too much into this yet, except that right now it looks like May's in good shape. If she can emerge from round 2, that may make her the shoe-in. But it's sometimes it's hard for me to figure out all these British politics.
Right. The other thing that was interesting to me is since the Brexit vote, the left leader, Labour leader, is gone. The UKIP leader has quit. The Conservative Party leader, they all got shot out of the saddle. We're cleaning up the mess, but it won't be you guys. It won't be the people who got us in it because you're all gone. They've all quit. They've all been forced out. And
right.
The top conservative pick is forced out as well. That's four of the top politicians in Britain have been eliminated from prime minister in the last week.
And that's probably what has kind of roiled the stock market a little bit. It's been back and forth. It recovered a little bit. It's starting to backslide a little bit now. It's just that you look at there's a leadership vacuum in a sense. They're not sure where they're going. That'll be resolved in due course, and as we've talked before, this is a long process of unwinding this and trying to figure out exactly what the net effect will be. The Remain people will still be fighting, I think, this battle for a while. Trying to talk about the evils of Brexit, but not even they know for sure exactly what's going to happen.
Right, and I think it's less than the doomsayers.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of doom and gloom going on here.
Right, and there's also the people. Scotland will throw sand in the gears. They're the maddest now they're ever going to be. Right, pretty soon they'll say, it didn't really ruin my life.
It's like a lot of other things. There's an initial reaction, and over time it kind of it just dies down a little bit. Everybody kind of settles in, and then you're okay.
All right. I think that's what's happening here.
All right, last segment here will just be on our friend Al Gore. We know how much you love Al Gore, Brian. So he did
generates a lot of business.
Yeah. So he was interviewed by the Tennessean down in Nashville, and where he once worked, talking about the whole inconvenient truth, all his work on global warming, climate change. And they got to a point in this interview talking about kind of the impact that he had, and he compared himself to Jackie Robinson. And he said, there is a time-honored tradition of people who strongly disagree with a message and take it out on the messenger. And opponents of integration had a personal animus for Jackie Robinson. Opponents of all the great social movements would take out after the advocates that were most effective in asking people to change. How do you do this? I mean, you're from the South. Mm-hmm. You've done a lot on the environment. What's going on here with Al?
Well, Al has a sort of elevated sense of his own importance in this. Let's look at what he's done. He has not moved the ball really at all on this. They're doing through administrative action what they cannot do through democratic processes because people do not judge this threat as seriously as he does. So he really has not. He's made a lot of noise. He's recognized as a reliable maker of noise on this subject, but he's not recognized as a mover of opinion on it.
Right, and I didn't see anything in the article that talked about that fact or the things that he had done have been largely debunked. Right. I mean, it was pretty much a puff piece for him, just holding him up to this icon of the environmental movement.
Right, and his conclusion though is not wrong. Okay, the messengers, the people have said, we are overemphasizing this. We are overstressing this. We are overstating the dangers here. Those are the real prophets, right? Because they've stood against the liberal media, public opinion, everything to present hard truths that with real policy ramifications. And he's right. They have been, I think about like Myron Ebell, people like that. All the persecution those people take for standing for what they believe to be right.
Okay, 2-minute warning. What do you want to talk about?
Another brilliant segue. The largest oil-producing country in the world is now the United States. We have passed the Russians. We've passed Saudi Arabia. We're barely ahead, but it's because of fracking. It's because we've learned to get oil, recover oil in safe ways. You hear this about the water table. The water table is here, right? Fracking takes place here. So unless the pipe leaks going up through the water, it's no danger to the water. That's all a bunch of what could be a danger of. And Oklahoma, they're talking about this a little bit, is earthquakes, small earthquakes, because you're moving around a lot of sediment. Things that have been set in place a long time are getting jiggled a little bit. Okay, that's its own thing that it's worth thinking about, especially in places like Oklahoma, West Texas, where it's mountains and it's you're a little more susceptible to that kind of thing. But we have invented a thing outside of government, in spite of government, right? In spite of everything the Obama administration could throw at it, okay, that has made us the top petroleum producer in the world. It's a real statement on what makes America great.
Yeah, and who would have thought that this would have even been possible? That was not something anybody would have predicted. And so my short take really is on public broadcasting and July 4th fireworks. So for those that braved all the bad weather on July 4th, they knew that they were in. They couldn't see a darn thing for the most part. It was pretty foggy and misty. The fireworks went off as planned. Public broadcasting, which does a Capital Fourth broadcast, that is the highlight of that broadcast, is to show the fireworks. But because the visibility was so poor, PBS, they decided to go ahead and actually cut a bunch of other fireworks from other broadcasts from previous years and put them in and show them. But they got called out on Twitter. They then apologized. First of all, they first defended themselves by saying it was the patriotic thing to do. They've now backed off on that. But unbelievable that you would even do that. I mean, that to go ahead and do that. I mean, how did they think they were going to get away with that? But PBS, WETA, local channel, shame on you.
Hillary says the same thing. I did this for patriotic reasons. Anyway.
All right. Well, that's it. Thanks a lot for joining us. This has been another edition of the Bias Buzz, and join us next week. And don't forget that you can now download us on iTunes.